Today we're going to do the second part of Learning Target 8.1 on perfect squares and radicals. On our first day, we made a list of all of the perfect squares from 1 to 20 because these are the ones that you will use the most often. And when you have them memorized, it makes things a lot quicker for you. We also talked about finding the sides of the areas of squares. And today, the last part talks about what to do with square roots or radicals when your numbers are not on this list, when they're not perfect squares. So I'm going to talk about when you have to do something like this. Will ask you to find two consecutive whole numbers that each square root is between. And the reason they're asking for this is because these are not on our list. In order to do this, we have to understand what the directions are asking. So we're going to start with 2. We have to find 2 answers. So all of my answers are going to have 2 numbers. The word consecutive, that word means in a row. And whole numbers are numbers that are not fractions or decimals or negatives. So I could say 1 and 2 are whole numbers, but they're also consecutive. They're in a row. I could also say 10 and 11 would be 2 consecutive whole numbers. So are 33 and 34. Those are all examples of 2 consecutive whole numbers. And finally, they're asking us to do the ones or the pairs that our square root is in between. So we're going to use our lists and figure out which ones these are between. So I'm going to start with the first question. They're going to ask us to find 2 consecutive whole numbers that the square root of 95 is between. Now I'm going to use this list that we made, and that's going to make my life a lot easier. So I'm going to take this square root of 95 and I'm going to run it down our list of perfect squares until I can find a number or 2 numbers that it goes between. So it's 95. Still looking. Here it is. The square root of 95 is between the square root of 81 and the square root of 10. So the square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 10 is, or the square root of 100 is 10. So since the radical 95 is between these 2 whole numbers that are consecutive, my answer to this question is going to be right here. It's between these 2. So I'm going to write down my answer is between 9 and 10. Question number 2. I'm supposed to find the 2 consecutive whole numbers that the square root of 125 is between. So I'm going to take that number. I'm going to try to find 2 consecutive numbers that this is between. It's not in that first list. So I'm going to try my second list. Right here. The square root of 125 falls between 11 and 12. So my answer to this question is going to be between 11 and 12. Notice how I'm writing my answers. There's 2 numbers, they're in a row, and they're whole numbers. That's what they're asking for. Number 3, the square root of 390. Well, this is pretty big, so I'm not even going to try over here. I'm going to try my bigger numbers, looking for 2 numbers that 390 falls between. Here it is, right here. It falls between 19 and 20. So my answer to this question is going to be 19 and 20. Finally, my last question is to find the 2 consecutive whole numbers that the square root of 19 is between. Again, this isn't going to work because they're all too small. Or are they? I've actually got 119 between 100 and 121. Because of how I wrote my list and I had to break it in half, it actually comes right here, which is between 10 and 11. So my answer for this question is going to be 10 and 11. And that is how we are going to tackle questions where we don't have square roots that are in our perfect squares list.